Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Western Spirit. Today, we have a very special guest. Today, we have with us Lois Perry. Lois is the director of the Heartland Institute of UK and Europe, and she is the former campaign United Kingdom Independence Party chairwoman. Right? I got that right.
Leader, and I'm the director, not the rector. I'm the director.
Director. That's what I said. The director of the Heartland Institute UK in Europe, the former UKIP, how would you say UKIP leader, and a good friend of our acquaintance Nigel Farage. And Lois, it's great to talk to you. And we're talking at a very interesting time in the UK and Reform UK. So it's amazing to speak with you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
So, Lois, you just came back from a very nice, amazing, actually, Reform UK conference in Birmingham. And for people who are outside the UK, and maybe people are also in the UK who want to know what's happening behind the scenes, we've seen a little bit in the past month, and we're going to get into it a little bit about your role in it, but the craziness around Reform UK. But it seems that the party is getting stronger and stronger. The polls, it's rising in the polls, no matter what's happening, all the background noises. What did you see there? What was the atmosphere among the the people who are going to these events and are the fanatical people of Reform UK? So what are they feeling behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, you say they're the fanatical people, and of course, anyone who goes online and buys a ticket to a rally, yeah, they are pretty fanatical. But you know, this was the biggest political rally, full stop, for any party or anything since the Second World War. Margaret Thatcher, in her heyday, was she had 3,000 people would attend conference. I mean, it was over 10,000. It had a rock star atmosphere. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It did have a rock star atmosphere, and people were very excited because they felt that there's a uniparty that has an agenda, a globalist agenda. And I did a TV panel yesterday with a mutual friend of ours, Dave Atherton, who's very big on social media. And he said that people are sick to death of it. They genuinely are, and they feel that there's one set of policies, i.e., net zero, anti-growth, high tax, the end of the nation state, mass uncontrolled immigration, often from countries that do not share our values, your values in Israel and our values in the United Kingdom. And so, you know, they see reform and Nigel Farage as something completely different.
And Lois, just one little thing. One thing that you told me before we started recording was that it had a Donald Trump sort of vibe, like the Madison Square Garden, like a week before the election in America, a week or two before MSG, the biggest stadium of the world. Thousands of people come to her political leader. We haven't had that, I think, for 50, 60 years already. So do you think Nigel is channeling that a little bit?
Yes, yes, is the blunt answer. But it's the funny thing is, from a English perspective, a British perspective, is he did this rally, the biggest rally for 60 years in this country, to launch local elections. And the big thing they were talking about was, it was a bit of a joke. That's why he came into the arena on a JCB special tractor that fills in potholes in the road. Now, potholes in the road are not normally a very politically sexy subject, is it? But it's the number one concern for people when they go out and vote in local elections. So we had, the Reform Party had a stage that would rival any hit West End or Broadway musical. It was amazing. It was a broken Britain high street. And then Nigel comes in on this JCB pothole mending tractor with all lights going off and music playing, and he was hanging off it. Oh my God. I thought, oh Nigel, oh my, what are you doing? But it was good. And but the whole thing, there was a passion, there was an energy. And I mean, I represent the Heartland Institute UK and Europe, and we work with all the political parties, not just Reform UK. Certainly not. I have meetings and have had meetings with all of the political parties in this country, and we're building other units across Europe as well for our climate skeptic free market and freedom of speech agenda. But you know they are the only party, and they do credit me in my with my former hat on with a different campaigning organisation that I started called Car 26. They're the only party that have said that they will abolish the net zero targets, and they will abolish the ban on diesel and petrol cars and vehicles. So even though I am not affiliated in any way officially with Reform, obviously there is going to be a little bit of excitement because they've taken on what we believe in so much, the Heartland Institute.
So, Lois, I want to also talk about the controversy. So, we talked about how Reform is going up in the polls. They're in most, I think, in all the polls right now. They're the number one party in the UK. Yes, more than Labour, more than the Conservatives. They're the number one. Even after this whole I forgot his name, Rupert Lowe controversy. Yes, I know. I never heard of him until this thing. So I guess it helped him gain some traction.
Well,
But
don't worry, you won't hear about him ever again.
we'll see. But my point is that there was a controversy. All of the newspapers were talking about it. You couldn't get away from it if you follow a little bit of British press, and they're still going up in the polls. And so I want to maybe talk about just the fact that we were speaking about it last week, that you got a little bit into it. They're making fun of you online. Tell us a little bit about what was happening there.
Yeah, well, I had a combination of. Let's start from the beginning. So Rupert Lowe, he did a newspaper interview, and in this newspaper interview, bearing in mind they're a very young party, they only have 5 MPs, right? Rupert Lowe did an interview in a national newspaper saying that he felt that Nigel was messianic, that he wasn't the right person to lead the party and the country, and that Rupert felt that he was the right man, that it would fall to him to have to do it. And I mean, if that isn't a red flag to a bull, I don't know what is. He effectively, by doing this highly critical, highly personal attack on Nigel Farage, and also the way that the party's structured, and its chairman Zia Youssef, how he has structured the party, because they've got 400 branches now. Last year they had precisely zero. So the work that's gone in is extraordinary. But anyway, so and then it all blew up. Then it all came out that he was being investigated, that there'd been complaints in his department about from 2 women to do with things that had gone on in the office. I'm not sure of the exact details. He'd crossed the floor in Parliament and had to be physically pulled off another MP, and the sergeant at arms, that's what he's called in the House of Commons. I don't know if you've got one in the Knesset, but someone with an official title who could physically pull the men off of each other, because it is all normally men, isn't it? And he had to be physically pulled off this guy, and then it turns out that he threatened violence not only to Lee Anderson, which is another Reform MP, but also to Zia Youssef, who's the chairman also. So all this stuff came out. Now, these allegations and things were being investigated before the newspaper article, but the way that it looked, and of course the way that the Rupert Lowe supporters wanted to present it, was this has all been made up because he criticised Nigel. It was actually the other way around. But why let facts get in the way of a good story? And then it went crazy, absolutely crazy. I mean, there was I don't know if you remember, but have you heard of Charles Saatchi, the big advertising guru? Have you heard of him? No. Okay. Well, he was married to this very famous lady in the UK, and when they got divorced, it was a big story. You're either Team Saatchi or Team Nigella, and it was all like that, and it was all crazy. I love Charles to bits, and I sent him a Team Saatchi T-shirt, which he said was the best gift he's ever got. Bearing in mind he's a billionaire, I doubt that is the best gift that he's ever received, but it was very sweet of him to say that anyway. But it all went very Team Rupert or Team Nigel. And then we found out, I was told at the highest level, I had a little bird whisper to me that there were Indian bots involved in terms of numbers and retweets and even comments and likes and followers, and that the whole Rupert thing, the reason it wasn't being reflected in the polling in the country was because it wasn't even real online. It wasn't real online. And I did a couple of tweets myself. I did a couple of television interviews about it. And then my life went crazy.
Wait, so just tell us, why did it go crazy? Because you gave an interview when you were under the weather, like we in America like.
Oh yeah, I just got back from Belize. Now I don't know if you know how far away Belize is from England, but it was 4 flights to get to where I was going, and I only stayed for 5 days. So it was about so I wasn't at my best. So I had allegations that she's been drinking and all of that, and but the worst thing wasn't that. That's fine. The worst thing was just the really, really highly personal stuff, because these new AI bots are really clever. So so say for example you have 20 comments and they're saying that I don't want to use bad language because you're such a lovely man.
They were using the C word and the S word.
No, I'm not going to. No, okay. All right. So basically, the allegations were that, not allegations, but the insults were very highly sexualized in nature, um, old whore and stuff like that. But what the bots had done is if they saw that there was a few comments that were similar, then they would replicate it, but using slightly different wording. So you'd have like thousands of things said that are horrific, but in slightly different ways. And this went on for quite a long time. And yeah, I switched my phone off in the end. I've got a landline. I'm a bit old fashioned. I was brought up by my grandparents.
You still have one?
No, I had it installed when I moved into this flat. But you know what? I'm glad though. I'm glad that I did put it in, because I WhatsApped 5 people my number that I wanted to be able to get hold of me. If they, explained what was going on, and then switched my phone off. And yeah, I had to.
So you were getting also personal messages on like WhatsApp and Messenger and X private messages and all that kind of stuff?
No, it was well. They were mainly supportive. The private ones, the ones that were coming in online, were from accounts that had just been set up in the last 20 minutes, and had no followers. It was so dodgy. I mean, Dave Atherton said to me that he believes very much. He's very involved in Twitter. In fact, that's his big thing is X. And when Rupert loaded 2 tweets, but almost telling everyone to have a go at me. One of them was beep bop, as in she's nutty. And there was another one saying I bonkers. But he's quite clever the way that he worded it, because on the surface it looked like he was just being a bit jovial, but there was an darker tone to what he was saying. So I had a mix of the bots and the real people attacking me.
But you know what's really weird is that even if I assume some of them, maybe a minority, whatever, we don't know. It's Yes, there were real ones. My point is that the bad thing is a practice that a lot of politicians in Israel, there was a number of investigative journalists that found different politicians were using bots. You pay money to these people that control thousands of bots. They do their command. They go after whoever they want and all this kind of thing. But some people were real. And Yes, and my point is that we always on the right used to say against cancel culture, and that that people could have different opinions, but you shouldn't get personal. And we're against, being mean to people just because they have different views. And then this little internal thing inside a small right, as of now, small right wing party, and it becomes so personal and so dark and mean and like really disgusting, and it's like you're replicating what you stood against for all these years that was happening on the other side. That's what's really annoying.
I no, you're right. The worst of the left. Yeah, we are supposed to be better than that, aren't we? But I mean, I said this again. I said this on the program that I was on in at the UK yesterday. Um, I when I led the UKIP for not very long actually. The idea was that, and I campaigned on this idea. So it wasn't a. Everyone said it's a conspiracy theory, but it wasn't a conspiracy theory because I actually campaigned saying I wanted to merge Reform and UKIP. So, but when I became the leader, it became very clear to me that they had a very strong contingent within their party, which was not pleasant at all. I mean, anti-Semitic, homophobic, really, deport all foreigners. I had to throw two skinheads out of a meeting who stood up when I was taking questions and said, "What are we going to do about the Jewish problem?" I said, "Get out, just get out." And I got security, just take them
You still
out.
have those in the UK? I thought it was basically finished.
No, there was two. I think they might have been the last two. Well, anyway, they were thrown out. But when I did my interview, because I had six weeks off because I'm not always ill, by the way, but I have had I had pneumonia. I was very poorly last year, and and then I won the leadership of UKIP 2 days after being discharged from hospital from pneumonia, and so it was a pretty stressful time. But when I did my interview after I had a proper break, after I resigned the leadership, Nigel took over Reform, and I resigned the UKIP leadership. I had 6 weeks off, no phones, no laptops, anything, total digital detox, nothing. I didn't want to go online because I knew they'd be saying horrible things about me anyway, so I didn't want to go online. Um, when I did when I came back and did my big interview about it on Murdoch Station Talk TV, I said that the people that tended to be the biggest anti-Semites within UKIP tended to be Tommy Robinson fanatics as well, and Tommy Robinson twisted that right to do a tweet attacking me, saying she's accused me of being an anti-Semite. I didn't. I was very clear. I know he's a great friend of Israel, right? I was very, very clear that it was the people within the party that I wanted out. And also, they were back channeling to Tommy Robinson, and that there was no way that I could merge with Reform while they were doing that. So there was lots of stuff going on. But Tommy did a tweet saying, "Found her!" Exclamation! 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 A video telling his people to pile on, and my Twitter address. So this is the second time this has happened to me.
So you're used to it already. Okay.
I know I don't want to be used to it,
Right.
Ariel.
That's life. It comes with the territory. Let me ask you about some stuff that are just a little bit bigger. So, one of the things that we were talking about last week, and I think it's interesting to get into, is the fact that the entire European continent seems to be moving to the right. We've had elections in Germany not too long ago, where the AfD gained a lot of seats, and the new chancellor will be from a more definitely a right wing and plus very supportive of Israel. So we're very happy about that. Holland, Geert Wilders' party gained a lot. So you have all over France, Le Pen's her niece was just in Israel, and I met her. So a lot of the right wing in Europe in general are growing the parties, but in the last election in the UK, we saw the exact opposite happening. We saw the Conservative Party, which are considered the right, going way down, at least for people like me. That's what the right, conservatives. So they went. right? And the left, the Labour has an overwhelming majority in your parliament. The Reform Party has, I think, 5 or 6 seats, and which is very weird because I think they basically got the same amount of votes as the Liberal Democrats, who got like 3 times the amount of seats. So, so it's very weird. But still, what is happening to the UK?
Right. Okay. So I can see why it looks like there was a Labour landslide, but there wasn't. And that sounds very strange, but it was. You know that the old biblical story about you being built on sand rather than being built on a firm foundation, right? I'll give you the difference in with Tony Blair, for example, when he had his Labour landslide, that had firm foundations. Yeah, this landslide on the surface, the same house on the same, but is on sand. And the reason for that is because actually, if you combine the Reform and the Conservative vote, it was considerably more than the Labour vote, and a lot of people just didn't know what to do and just didn't turn out. So you've got a situation, so which means that it's highly unlikely that they're going to get in next time. Highly, highly unlikely, which I believe is why they're pushing this radical agenda so quickly. I think that's that they don't. Blair knew he had at least 2 or 3 terms. They know they've got one. A lot of people say, "Oh, why did Reform split the vote?" And that's well because they genuinely felt that there wasn't any much difference between the Conservatives and the Labour Party anymore. And you've got places like where I'm from in Essex that have only ever been Conservative. The seats have never not been Conservative since they're set up, and they're Labour now. And the people went out and voted Labour or didn't vote or voted Reform, and they knew they were going to get Labour. Even though they were Conservative voters, but they wanted to either they wanted to give the Conservatives a wake up call, a wake up call to say, look, we're not going to come out and blindly vote for you if you're not going to be Conservative. So even though they knew that it was going to get Labour in, the vote was split. But next time that won't happen because now people have the confidence that if they vote Reform, the people that they will vote Reform next time because they know that they'll get in. But whereas before it was a completely untried and untested situation. I mean, they didn't have any seat.
But also, Lois, one thing is that now the Conservatives they know that there's competition, so they have to be better. So like,
They're not. Yeah, but they're not. I mean, they've elected this sort of like, bless her, sort of head girl. Like she could do really good speeches in front of like, at the school assembly and everything, and she's got all the badges, and she's a great girl and everything. But she's
no, but my point is that even in policy decisions or votes, I see also in the parliament, they feel that they have to be more to the right because they're being challenged on the right.
sorry, yeah, joke. You are right, Ariel. Joking aside, you are absolutely right. They are trying to. They're taking on board a lot of reforms policies. So yeah, so people voted. They knew they were going to get Labour, but they wanted to give the Tories a good kicking, either a wake up call or something completely different, which is now what we're seeing right now. I mean, if the polling holds even at its current rate, they're looking at well over 200 seats. Well over 200 seats.
So, but that we have time for that, right? In the UK, you don't really have snap elections. The governments could change, but the election will be in its time in a few years. Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit like here. Um, let me, well, right now it is because the government, if it calls election, will probably lose, at least according to the polls. So they're trying to hold on tight. Maybe we'll talk also about what you said they're implementing radical agenda. So we are talking about the show about before the show about um, the welfare state in the UK and the fact that you called it a communist country, but I'll just say it seems to be going more and more towards big government, more programs that are designed to pull people in to be reliant on government more and more. and the people who actually maybe need the assistance are not getting it. So it's sort of like an upside down type of thing where people who aren't needing it are getting it, and people who do need it don't get it at all. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, again, I've been making this point recently. You've got people who are saying this is supposed to be a Labour government, and whilst we welcome the a radical agenda in terms of looking at welfare spend on disability and stuff like that, it does seem very strange that you've got a Labour government that is implementing these really hardline policies. Like, for example, the winter fuel payment has been removed for elderly people, which they get every year. I think so. I think it's three or £400 a year, and they get, and energy bills are through the roof at the moment because of mad net zero, and all the other stuff that's going on in the world. So why would you remove the winter fuel payment from people that they know it will kill? And it will kill them because people die of the cold, especially elderly people. Removing payments for genuinely disabled people, that doesn't make sense. But it does make sense if you've ever read any George Orwell. It really does. And my little girl and I, we she was doing the book at school. I'd read it before, but obviously the famous book Animal Farm, about the communism, and one of the most sinister bits in the entire book is all the animals have been promised by the pigs who are in charge that that basically when they're old, or when they if they're infirm, the horses, for example, there'll be an area for grazing and everything, and they'll live out their days having done their bit. And one of the most sinister bits in the book is when the other animals notice that that's been concreted over the grazing bit. The elderly animals are nowhere to be seen, and they can smell the horse bones that have been for glue. They can smell it, and that is communism. They hate old people and they hate disabled people. I mean, we're very, very lucky. They were trying to rush through an assisted suicide bill. I don't know if you know about this. I mean, they really push and rush it through Parliament, but they tried to push it through too quickly. But that would have enabled people that were eventually, maybe not straight away, but that would have enabled people that were depressed to be able to take their own lives. And it's an anti-human agenda, and it's not socialist.
But wait, but we do have to say it. For example, one of the things that I'm reading just from afar is like you're giving these illegal migrants free hotel rooms, paying for like their food, and giving them like a stipend and all these types of stuff. There's money for that. That's my point. You're giving money for people who don't need it, who aren't even citizens a lot of times, and yet for the actual citizens, they're not getting almost anything a lot of the time.
No, what's happening is a lot of companies are using this labour, and they're paying them very, very small amounts of money. They're willing to, the government is subsidising it. My granddad said to me, right, my beloved late grandfather, my grandparents raised me. He said, if we leave Europe, Lois, they'll still need cheap labour. It's just that it will come in, the people will not look like us, they won't have the same religion as us, and they won't share our values, but they will still need to bring them in to do delivery I don't know, the kind of stuff that English people either don't want to do or don't even know, it's never even advertised to English people.
Yes, but it's not really cheaper because the taxpayer is paying subsidizing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's dodgy. There's definitely dodgy stuff going on as well. I mean, Winston Churchill's grandson Nicholas Soames is involved, or was involved, in a company called Serco. Now, Serco, that they actually greet the people as they come over, and they've got the contracts to feed them, house them, put them in hotels, and all of that kind of stuff. And they've got loads of other government contracts as well. So you're right. There's the people that are being screwed are the normal British tax-paying people, and I say this to everybody: being English and British is nothing to do with your religion or the color of your skin. It's about sharing a set of values. And so, I speak to people of all skin colors and all backgrounds who are so angry about these groups of young men who have very different attitudes to women. Not all, but a lot of them. Being put, for example, in a village, there might only be, I don't know, a couple hundred people in the village, but there's a really nice hotel with a golf course that does weddings. And there's suddenly 300 young men are put in this hotel, and then the village completely changes. It's a complete. If you've got guys who've come over from countries that we talked about this before, where they never see a woman, let alone a woman walking down the road in a miniskirt or even her ankles showing or whatever, they don't know how to react, and they react obviously in a completely wrong way. That some of the cultures that these men are coming from, some, not all, again, I qualify that, have very different views on when a girl's old enough to be.
Yes, and also I'll just first of all, the fact that you have to always qualify and say not all and some, it's like yeah, I mean, we can talk and say everybody can understand that we don't mean everyone, and we don't have to all put these qualifiers. But I would just say that there was this controversy, this that was going on for decades with these rape gangs and grooming gangs or whatever you want to call them, where and basically, I think in most of these cases, the gist is that the police and the authorities didn't want to prosecute it, didn't want to check it out because they were scared they would be called racist. At the end of the day, that's the basic.
Were they scared of that? They were actually scared. This is another thing my mutual friend Dave Atherton knows a lot about, because people anonymously from within organisations like the police and security services tip him off stuff as long as their names aren't used. And he said that because there's weapons in every mosque in the country, um, that that they're not just scared of being called racist, they're actually genuinely scared of there being riots on the streets with a huge amount of young men who are fully weaponed up and have got nothing to lose.
And so they sacrificed these young girls all through these decades. Yes, and we know these stories are horrible. Some of the stories that were prosecuted, I read some of the. It is horrible, and it's really like.
They don't care about those girls. They're white working class girls. A lot of them didn't have dads at home, but a lot of them did have, the ones that did have dads. Like, you've probably heard the stories. The dads go in to pull the girls out, their little girls out of being raped by 20 guys of Pakistani origin, or whatever, and then they get in trouble, or the little girl gets arrested for being drunk and disorderly. I mean, it's almost like you couldn't make it up. It's so awful.
Mhm. Um, and one of the things that this brings me to is the demographic change of the UK. So, um, I remember there's an old saying, demographics are a destiny, because, we see, for example, the 5 seats or six, I don't know, tell me, of actual seats that the candidates ran on the Gaza issue. Not that they support Israel, the opposite, that they support Hamas. It's pretty much what they were saying. And these people were, yeah. How do you explain what's happening? It's like,
Well, that uh, Nigel Farage actually touched, well, more than touched on it. He had a whole section of his speech about it. I don't know if you've watched the speech, but he said that he warned about this in the European Parliament, and he was shouted down as racist. But he said, if you have mass immigration without integration, this is what happens. We will, for the first time for a long time in the United Kingdom, we are going to have, we do have people voting along sectarian lines, and that's a shock.
but it's not even sectarian. It's like you're living in the UK, you're voting for someone who's not going to take care of your doesn't care about the
But it's
problems with
religious. What he's
potholes.
saying is it's religious. They're supporting fellow Muslims.
Yes, but fellow Muslims, not even in their own country, they don't care about the education in their district, the potholes in their district, the crime in their district.
Not even in their own country.
Yes, they don't care about it.
And why don't they go and protest when Muslims are killed by other Muslims?
Oh no, they don't care about that. No. Um, it's like we're making fun of it, but it's very sad actually. But
Yeah, I was. Yeah, please don't think that if I'm being in any way light.
no, I find it funny, but it's sad at the same time. I'll give you an example, Lois. Yes, let me just give you another example if we're already talking. There's protests right now next in Gaza, not too far from where I am, of Palestinians protesting against Hamas. We know, for example, today that one of the main protesters was videoed being tortured to death by Hamas. And the video of his death and torture was uh, filmed and then distributed by Hamas in order to scare people not to protest. And I have not seen this protest have been going on for at least 7 days at this point, a week or so, even more. And these people are very brave. Someone who's going out and knows there's a good chance he's going to die, but he's protesting against these people. And I haven't seen any of the celebrities in the West that were against Israel supporting the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip that are protesting. I haven't seen really anyone tweeting about this guy's torture and death. It's been all over. If someone really was looking for it, he would find it. Nothing. And I assume these MPs that are supporting Gaza didn't say anything. So it's so hypocritical, and obviously they don't care about the Palestinians. They care about them in order to use them to be against the Jews. It's like a vehicle.
Yeah, it's an excuse. Absolutely, 100%. Don't worry, we know about it. We're aware of it.
I'm very worried in the sense that the it seems to me that a lot of Brits, and I remember seeing a poll not too long ago, the young people in the UK are not proud to be British. There's a
No, I know that.
problem.
Well, that's to do with the indoctrination in schools. You've got Marxist woke ideology that is being pushed in schools. And another MP at the rally that I told you about did a whole section in his speech about that. We will throw these Marxist agitators out of the schools, with the trans ideology and, the hating who you are.
How many British young people hate themselves, percentage wise? Do you think?
Oh, I haven't. I'm so sorry. I haven't got the exact figures in front of me, but I know that that the percentage increase in people in young people that say they are not proud to be British went up by about 20-30% over quite a 10-year period. So it's a big leap. But I don't know. I try and be positive, and young people that I speak to, and I'm not talking about generation, hang on, X here. No, hang on. I'm not talking about millennials. I'm a millennial, only just. I'm an elderly millennial. Um, but the new ones, Generation Z or Z, um, they're not woke. They are not woke. My daughter's 14, and it's not just because she's my daughter, but she is not woke at all. And my son's 21. I was a child bride, obviously. He's not woke. His mates aren't woke. I don't know. They like that. They're very much. If you the reform polling shows massive support from 16 to 21-year-olds. So and I know in America that it was the young men that got Trump over the line. Very young men, actually. 18 to 25, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yes, which is why he went on all the podcasts that young guys listen to, the
Yeah,
bros.
yeah.
I guess that's very depressing. Also, that women are so to the left in America. So the only demographic group that was
Yeah,
like
but only the
over.
ugly ones. Have you not noticed that? All the best looking women at the Trump rallies, I thought.
well, well, I'm not saying anything because I don't want to get into trouble, but you have the
No,
right to
okay,
say
no, of
whatever you
course.
need.
Sorry.
Um, so, I want to also ask you about Jews in the UK. So, I've been in Israel, obviously, and meeting with. I was just at a conference in Jerusalem where it was a conference in English organized by the Ministry of the Diaspora here. They invited leaders from all over Europe. There was a lot of English speakers, thousands of people, meeting with a lot of people from the UK who moved to Israel after October 7th. And I'm asking them, why did you come here? There's a war. We're having missiles. We still have almost every day a siren here where I live near Tel Aviv. what are you looking for here? Go to the UK, everything's calm, everything's good. And they said, no, we feel more safe here because the UK, every Saturday you have these marches, and people are discriminating, cursing us, pushing us. Is it really that unsafe to be Jewish in the UK?
I think I think that the rallies that were allowed, not the rallies, but the marches that were allowed every Saturday by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, uh, you know, past synagogues and obviously on a Saturday as well, that were put the fear of God literally into a lot of Jewish people in the UK. The fact that anti-Semitic attacks are going up and the police are not taking them seriously, they're not prosecuting them, and if they do get to court, the judges are being lenient, and it is scary. I mean, I was talking to a colleague of mine, Lance Foreman, who's a businessman, smoked salmon guy in this country, Jewish businessman. I think he tells me he's famous in Israel, but obviously not, because you don't know who he is. So I think he might have been telling me fibs. But anyway, so but he said to me, he's asked this question a lot, and he said that for him that he feels he's okay probably, but what about his children? What about his grandchildren? And well, the amount of Jewish friends of mine that are moving to Israel is extraordinary. Like you say, it's safer over there. But I also think it's to do with imported anti-Semitism. I think it's to do with as the amount of Muslims that come into the country, and then of course English people are not having very many children. So just on and there was an article that was written by quite a famous Muslim author in the Spectator a couple of years ago, and he said that anti-Semitism is British Muslims' dirty little secret. And when you've got 75% of British Muslims that have been polled recently doesn't think Israel should exist, you can start to see why the Jewish people in the UK are not feeling particularly safe. But I think it's since October the 7th, really. It's since October the 7th.
And Lois, I want to
Mm.
just ask you also about the response of the authorities. So, like you said, the mayor of London allowed it to happen, but also I think it's called the Met Police, which are the police in the capital city. It seems to me they're even like stopping the Jews from like walking by the protesters instead of
Oh my
stopping the
God.
protesters from. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, there
yeah.
was one guy who was accused of being blatantly Jewish or something like that.
Yes.
It was a word like that.
Why are they acting like that?
Oh, they're woke. And also, you've got Sadiq Khan, who is one of the most partisan, obviously anti-Jewish, anti anything that isn't Muslim. It's terrible to say it, but it is true. I mean, if there's any Muslim festival in London, there's lights everywhere. Everything's taken very seriously. But I mean, there were permissions that were denied for public menorahs over Hanukkah.
But also Christmas trees, I heard, were
Christmas
denied.
trees, yeah, absolutely. And we've got this mayor, and the police report directly into him. So I mean, the amount I spoke when you talk to people off the record, a lot of police aren't happy at all about the instructions that they're being given. They're really not, and they're probably being told that if a guy is going in the middle of the pro Hamas march, wearing his skull cap and sort of, shouting, which he has every right to do, you guys are supporting terrorists, in a way that they would argue they're protecting him, but actually what happens is he's the it's wrong. It is wrong.
He
Absolutely.
gets punished and they
Unfortunately, the
continue.
marches are dying off a bit now. There's
Well,
not so
yeah,
many.
but now they have other problems. They
Yeah. Yeah,
now they're
that's true.
marching against the UK. Two more things that I want to talk about. Number one is net zero. So
Oh
that
my
is one of your
God.
babies. one of the things you like to talk about. So
Yeah.
explain to us what's happening with that, why it's so dangerous, and what, like you said, Reform is the only party that is right, the big party that's actually talking about totally leaving net zero. But
Mm.
what are the actual things on the ground that are happening now because the government is addicted to net zero?
Well, okay. So the first thing is because of net zero targets and because of this whole insane climate agenda. We're not fracking, even though we've got plentiful gas. The Boland Shale, which is in the north of England, has shale gas, which is such high quality. The Americans are jealous of it, and we were about to start fracking, but it was all stopped. And because of that, our electricity prices are 8 times higher than Americans. 8 times. So that's all to do at the altar of net zero. The other thing to say about net zero is please don't think that it's anything to do with saving the planet, because it really isn't. Because if any carbon emission reduction that happens in this country, in the UK, just gets taken over to India. So, yeah, or China. So, and they're building coal-fired power stations every week to listen to this, to make the electricity, to make the wind turbines for us, and the solar panels, which apparently will make us carbon neutral. The science is hotly debated about whether human beings are making an impact through CO2 emissions on the earth. It is not a fait accompli. It's not 98% of
But
scientists
even if it
agree.
was,
But
like
even
you
if it
said,
was, it's still nonsense because we're just importing it, exporting it around the world. What this is about, it's all about control, because everything to do with net zero means you're more under control. You've got an electric car, then it can you can it can be remotely stopped. If they you could there's a function on electric car. Say for example you've got your 17-year-old driving it, yeah, where you can say you don't want your son to leave the boundary of London, right? And you can set this thing on it. So if everyone's got an electric car and it's a lockdown, you're not going to be jumping in your car and doing a sneaky trip to grandma's with some milk because the car won't start. Smart meters in your house, which are supposed to be to save the environment. A lot of people hate them because these smart meters started making decisions about when they were allowed to have a shower and things like that. I mean, it was really, really creepy. You've got if you're not using gas, then you have to have heat pumps, which don't work properly and aren't correct. Most of our housing stock, I mean, the house that I'm in, my house, is 200 years old. If a heat pump in the winter here, you would have lukewarm water and the heat wouldn't touch the sides. It's just not appropriate. And the net zero targets that they're putting onto private enterprise, private rentals, means that people are just coming out, people just saying, we can't do it. The compliance is just too expensive. So you end up with people who are unable to drive because they can't afford an electric car anyway, sitting in houses that are probably they're going to have to rent off the government in the end because no one will be wanting to do private rentals anymore. Hardly any hot water, cold, and then they're saying, oh, to save the planet, you need to eat less meat. So I don't. Do you know about the social credit score that's in China? It's a real thing. Right? If you tweeted against the government, for example,
you get a bad rating.
you get a bad rating. If you and then what? So then you're not allowed a shower? I mean, if everything is interconnected, then it's a dystopian nightmare. I mean, it makes Orwell look like Toy Story.
But
What
that
they
you think is net zero going towards that?
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate goal of it. And if you say to most people that you can only have an electric car, it means 95% of people won't be able to drive because the majority of people, I don't, like most young guys with their first car, it's not a 30,000-40,000 pound car, is it? It's normally a 500 quid car that is probably too, shouldn't even be on the road. But that will all just go because, you know, it just won't exist. You won't have private enterprise, white van man, because an electric van doesn't work with it if you've got anything in it that weighs too much. I've got a friend of mine that does deliveries. He owns a filtration company, and they make filters for the NHS and all sorts of things. He said that his van, his equivalent Mercedes van, that wouldn't even start with the load that they typically put on for one day, and to deliver the same amount of goods with stoppage time and everything that would normally be a day would be 4 days.
Yeah. And I would just say, Lois, let me just add what you're saying is that I think at the end it's also their anti-growth. So they
Oh,
don't want
it's an
people to,
anti-capitalist agenda.
yes,
No, 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 no bones, no bones.
right. So they want people to suffer because that is the natural reaction to that. Even if people are okay with all that stuff that you just said, at the end of the day, they want people to have less money in their pockets, to have less choices at the supermarket and at the car dealership. Exactly. So and they are openly talking about this, people who are pushing this kind of agenda all over the world, I guess also in the UK. So I think um it's a danger wherever it is, and people should it people like you are standing up, but people should join you also to stand up. I want to also, last thing that I it's something that I think is so important, and you made me a little bit optimistic, but I'm still not convinced, is the fact that we spoke about that people are looking for meaning in life, especially young people. I speak a lot about this in Israel, but we have less of a problem. I think most people here are very traditional. So people here have a lot of kids. Even secular Israelis have way more kids than the birth replacement. Um, so that's a positive thing. And one of the reasons is because they're very traditional. They go to synagogue, even if they're not observant, they have a community. And the West, including the UK, people are very atomized. They've become very detached from, tradition and from what their Western society used to be. And we see declining birth rates in all of the West, including the UK. And we see in America, at least, we always thought America was religious and everything. There's been a steep decline in people going to church or affiliated with organized religion. And then one of the things that's so amazing is that the new generation, the one that you said really likes you, Reform UK, but in general, they've been going more and more to church.
They
And
have,
and
and on
tell
Ash,
us,
yeah, on Ash Wednesday, where are we? We're right in the middle of Lent at the moment, so that was must have been 20 days ago. I'm going to get told off by my priest on Sunday if I've got that wrong. But no, okay, so on Ash Wednesday, Europe's churches were packed. They were packed with people being ashed. I've never seen so many people. It was slightly virtue signaling. I know there's a thing in the Old Testament where it says that you mustn't be like publicly showing everyone how religious you are and everything. But look, I'll forgive them. I'll forgive them because I thought it was so fantastic, and I did it as well. But it was so fantastic to see all these young people with these ash crosses on their forehead, and it's reported across Europe that the churches have never been fuller in 20, 30 years. So I think it's a reaction to another culture. So if you get rid of your own religion of your own country, there's not going to be no religion. Another religion will come in and replace
which is the woke religion, the woke religion.
the woke religion or a very strong religion like Islam. So, so what's happening at the moment, I believe, is a little bit of a fight back from, as you say, young people. More young people going to synagogue in this country, especially since the 7th of October atrocities. More and many more young people going to church. Um, so I don't know. I like to be hopeful. I like to be hopeful. But if it all goes wrong, I am allowed to come to it.
Yes, you are eligible for the right of return because your grandfather was Jewish. And so the way they did the
That's
laws
my
of
okay.
return,
So if you're right, I'm okay.
you're welcome here. And the reason why, just to explain for our non Israeli or Jewish viewers and listeners, the reason is that when the state of Israel was established, they decided to do the right of return for Jews to Israel based on the way Hitler would define a Jew. So the way he defined Jews to go to the concentration camps was by either side up to their grandchildren. So that is the way it is till
I'll
this
tell
day.
you. I'll tell you. It's not a funny story, but it's sort of like it's sort of dark humor. Anyway, so I was dating this guy, a Jewish guy, and his friend said, he said, well, you know, she's not Jewish. What are you doing? And everything. He said, look, if she's Jewish enough for Hitler, she's Jewish enough for me.
So there you go. It's a very nice thing to say. So, Lois, on that optimistic note that you're Jewish enough for Hitler, I want to say that I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I think that um, a lot of the background noise we said in the beginning with the whole internal fighting, it'll probably blow over
But
by
no
the
one.
time.
Oh, you wanted me to tell you backstage. You said tell me about
Yes, yes.
backstage.
What were they saying
We're in the
backstage?
VIP area and everything. It was Rupert who? It was like he, you know, gone.
But he's still an MP. Right. Yeah. But he still has the seat. So basically, they're looking forward. What you're saying, they're not. They're and the polls still reflect that they're in the lead, and we will also say that you have meetings with all the people, not only from the Reform UK. Like you said, you're speaking with the person that you made fun of with Cami. I forgot her last name. You're meeting with her too. I hope she doesn't. So, so my point is that you're working with all the people to bring free markets to the UK, to bring more free speech. We didn't talk about that, but there is an assault on free speech in your country. Um, you're bring Yes, freedom, which is we both agree that we need. It's so important to allow us to speak with each other. It's
Absolutely.
ridiculous what's
Yeah, I
happening.
can't even believe we're even debating that it could be an issue.
Well, there's a journalist that was arrested or investigated for tweeting a tweet that they didn't like, and she even deleted the tweet. But someone did a screenshot, and the police arrested her in the UK. It was a big story a few months ago. Yes, yes. So what I'm saying is that people should be very mindful that one day you'll tweet something that someone else in power won't like, and you should not, even if you don't agree with her or whoever, that's not the way that a free society functions. So, Lois, I thank you so much for whatever all the work that you're doing, and it's important. And people like us from other countries should be cooperating with each other to, you know, bring the stuff that we want to the forefront, which is so important for everyone, even those who don't agree with us. We're fighting for them too. Exactly. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for our viewers and listeners for being with us. If you have any questions, any comments for Lois, send them to me. Obviously, not like the ones she's been receiving on X, more nicer ones, and I will pass them on to you. And if Lois wants to answer, she can, and then I'll write them in the comments or whatever. We'll find a way to get that to you. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you on our next episode.